Hello there. So what is Yupo paper and why would you want to use it? So in this video I'm going to answer almost both of those questions because the second question, why you would want to use it, I haven't quite answered for myself personally because it doesn't quite fit in with my art making process, unfortunately, but maybe it'll fit yours after you find out what it's like. So the brand I bought here is unimportant. The paper was still milled in Japan, then it was repackaged for the brand you see. Something quite strange about this so-called paper is that it's made out of plastic. The stuff is made out of polypropylene. Now I don't fully understand or know the manufacturing process of this stuff, but despite being made out of plastic, it doesn't feel or behave exactly like just a sheet of plastic. It has a very slight amount of fine texture to it. It's not like paper though. I've taken some macro shots here to show you of the difference between the two. So we've got smooth paper on the left, Yupo on the right. You can see the Yupo has some slight texture about it, but it is vastly more uniform than smooth, normal paper, which is made out of dead plants, which is quite obvious now when you're looking at it this closely. I know it doesn't really look like Yupo has any texture at all, but it does. They seem to have managed to put friction, the essence of friction, on a smooth looking surface with, I don't know, science beyond my comprehension. Now, drawing on this paper was an unusual experience. First I tried fountain pen with pigmented ink in it. This is probably the smoothest paper I've ever used. I've never actually needed or wanted paper this smooth. I do like a slight amount of uniform friction, as it can give you a greater level of control when drawing. So then I waited for my line art to dry. Normally this takes like 30 seconds. A minute at the very most on normal paper. But this was not the case with this stuff. Oh no, due to this so-called paper missing a property that every other kind of paper has: absorbency. Because of this, any ink line you draw only sits on the surface of the paper, and it doesn't absorb any of the moisture out of it. So it took many minutes for it to dry. After waiting for like 30 minutes, I tried to see if it was dry by just lightly rubbing the line with my finger, and it still smudged. That would not happen on normal paper at all. So to illustrate, imagine if you left a trail of wet cake crumbs on polished floorboards, and then you let it dry on the floor. You could then easily move them around after they're dry and just sweep them up. The floor won't absorb the cake. It's just like sitting on the surface. But if you did the same thing on carpet, it would be very difficult to move the crumbs around on the surface, as the crumbs have now worked their way into the weave of the carpet. Now this paper is not quite like the polished floorboards or the carpet, but it's like a hybrid between the two. It's sort of like someone varnished some very rough floorboards. So now you have some texture for the cake crumbs to stick to without the absorbency of the carpet. And this absorbency seems to help with the drying of the ink. Now, having the quality of absorbency removed from your paper now means that the only art supplies that perform on it the way you would expect are pencils and maybe thick paints. I didn't try thick paints, but I think it would work. When I was watercolor painting on it, I was really failing to manage the various wet pools of color I was putting down and to keep them separate. If one color contacted another and what I wanted to be a clear border between the two, it was like watching a dam burst as the darker color started flowing into the lighter color. It was really annoying. I could always just wait a while for color A to dry before I add color B right next to it, but I don't have to do that on normal paper, so why should I? Then I tried some watercolor brush pens, the dye ink ones. They're quite cheap. They behaved a lot better, probably due to the lower water content of the ink. The pens put down less water, that's what I mean. And the longer drying time has the advantage that each brush stroke blends into one another more smoothly. And this is because the ink isn't staying put as much and also has time to self-mix on the surface. as long as that's what you want. Sometimes you want, a bit of an accurate brush stroke on a wet surface. Now pencils, they behaved very well. Our smooth, solid colours went down very quickly. Blending was possible. I was using the Faber-Castell Polychromos and I was very happy with what I saw. It also took the HP pencil lead from a mechanical pencil very well too. So smooth with the mechanical pencil. It feels like you're drawing with a pen. It's really nice. And then I tried out alcohol markers and it went back to being weird again. Each stroke you put down seems to push the previous one out of the way and replace it. Very odd. And where does the ink go from the previous stroke, you might ask? Well, it gets pushed out of the way and it rests at the sides of the new ink line. Here's a photo of it. Isn't that weird? Now, the question is, am I doing something wrong here? Or am I just expecting the wrong thing? So when I looked up Yupo paper alcohol markers, almost all of the image results are of highly abstract art, where people just let the ink flow wherever it wanted to. And that's really not the type of art style I want to go for. Now, let's talk about some other things which you should know about this paper. It's more durable than normal paper. You can't tear it. It won't break down in water. I've heard of some people scrubbing it clean and reusing it. I don't think I'll be doing that though. I don't want to use it again. Although scrubbing it clean is tempting, considering I don't like what I've drawn. Oh yes. Oh yeah, I've also heard people getting restaurant menus printed on it, and that's a pretty cool idea. But when you're making art on it, okay, let's go back to art making. This paper is very susceptible to becoming a bit hydrophobic if you touch it with your oily hands. And if you think your hands aren't oily, the watercolors you put down will tell you otherwise. Your hands are oily, okay. Another thing, polypropylene breaks down in UV light. So if you're going to hang it on a wall for a long period of time, this paper needs to be protected from sunlight or it will go yellow over time. So it needs to be behind some UV filtering glass. So in short, if you need a durable, non-absorbent sheet of textured plastic that your art can just sit upon, this is a product for you. But as for me, I won't be buying it again. This stuff has a purpose and it wasn't being used by me. So I'm happily going back to my primitive dead plant paper. Okay, goodbye. Although I could use this paper as a backing sheet in between sketchbook pages to stop a page bleeding onto the next page. That would be a pretty good idea maybe. Yes. Okay, goodbye.